Hello, I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. This series of podcasts is aimed at financial planning professionals and also those who are looking to enter the financial planning profession. We will be talking during the podcast about all things Certified Financial Planner certification related, talking to other CFPs around the world, and also we will be dropping in on some new entrants who've just entered the financial planning profession, and we'll be checking up along the way on a regular basis with them to see how they're getting on. I hope you enjoy today's podcast. Hello and welcome. I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. And in today's podcast, we are talking all things relating to becoming a certified financial planner and completing the CISI Level 7 Case Study Financial Plan Assessment. And I am joined by somebody who has recently become a CFP professional themselves, and that is Laura Ripley, who is a financial planner from BRI Wealth Management. Hello, Laura.
Hello, Jackie.
Welcome, and thank you for joining me today and agreeing to be interviewed. It's a great pleasure to have you on board.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
So before we get started in the nitty-gritty of talking about the level 7 and the case study and all the ups and downs that traditionally comes with all of that, just tell us a little bit about how you got into the financial planning profession, please.
Yeah, so it's been a long journey, but I started back in 2007 when I joined the industry, I would say, and I don't think at that time I had a vision or aspiration necessarily to be a financial planner. It was more about just absorbing what was going on in the financial services and finding my niche, I suppose, and building some experience and knowledge. But then probably about 10 years ago, my boss at the time gave me a fairly firm nudge to say you need to move on from that sort of behind the scenes role and become a client-facing planner. And I haven't looked back since then, actually. It's a very satisfying job, and I'm pleased I made that jump at the time.
That's fantastic. Well, it's definitely our gain in the financial planning profession. And it's really interesting, isn't it, how sometimes you come across other people or work alongside other people who perhaps see something in you that you don't see in yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my boss at the time was my mentor, really. And from the day I joined, even though I was pretty much just an office junior at the time, I should say just, should I? They're key people as well in any office. But he sort of took me under his wing and just pushed me. But it was almost like he knew how far to push me in at each time and the appropriate time. And as I said, I'm really glad that he pushed me into being a financial planner and that client-facing role.
That's great to hear. And so when did you come across the CFP, and why did you decide to get involved, roll your sleeves up and complete it?
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, CC was probably only 3 or 4 years ago where I really started to get a good look in sort of the content and everything for some of the CPD, for example. But I'm a great believer in self-development and self-learning and things. So I have literally used nothing else for most of my CPD since. I think their content is just fantastic.
Yeah.
And a couple of my colleagues had done the CFP, and it was considering what level they are in terms of financial planning. I think they're brilliant individuals, and they really struggle at the CFP. And I thought, wow, this looks like a really good challenge. And I'm always up for that. So I thought it was time for me to give it a go.
Excellent. Bite the bullet and,
Yes.
get on with it. And so let's talk about the process that you went through. Did you, you were a chartered financial planner with the CII as well. Did you do the level 6 exam, or did you do the bridge assessment, the professional assessment?
I did do the professional assessment, yes. So I think it was an online course that I did at the time. And that wasn't without its challenges. I mean, you can tell the standard of the CC qualifications overall just by this sort of content and examination. So yes, I did the professional assessment.
Yeah, excellent. And so for those of our listeners who are kind of thinking, what on earth are you two talking about? Instead of, if you're already a chartered financial planner with a CII, then instead of doing the level 6 exam, which is part of the CFP pathway, the level 6 exam, then a level 7 case study, you can get an exemption from that if you do this online learning and 2 lots of tests, I think, aren't there, that you do instead that take, about 13 to 16 hours, something like that.
Yeah, I definitely think that was the estimation that it gave. So yeah, I mean, it's not an insignificant amount of time that you need to spend on it. So don't think that it's a quick win, but it's probably quicker than doing the level 6 assessment with them, or level 6 examination with them.
Yes. And also because the level 6 is only twice a year, isn't it? It's only in March and September. So if you wanted to embark on the level 7 and become a CFP a bit sooner than that, then, obviously it's a swifter way to get through to the level 7 case study, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So you passed that with flying colours. And then what happened? Did you move straight on to obtain your level 7 case study?
Yes, I did. I pretty much did. I think there was probably a few months in between of finding the right time to fit it in. That's been a challenge because I knew from the work that my colleagues did that this was going to be a significant, time and effort that you need to put into it, and I wanted to give it that out of respect. I think you have to, if you're going to sign yourself up for this thing, then you need to be able to give it the right time.
Yes, you've got to be serious about it, haven't you? Otherwise, it's a lot of time and energy. And also, we've talked on other podcasts from other people who've mentioned that, family and friends commitment, they're in this as well, aren't they, along the way?
Yeah, and your teammates as well. My employer, I don't think I would have been able to do it without my employer at the minute. BRI were fantastic because they allowed me the time in my diary to allocate that to doing and you needed to apply a day at a time almost on the assessment because you need to get really stuck in and you're on doing some very complex calculations that you can't just then drop and go into something else and then pick it up again in half an hour. You need to be focused on just that for a day at a time. So they were very good at dealing with that and helping me through that.
Yeah, I mean, it's excellent to hear that you've got such supportive employers out there in the financial planning community. I know other people who are holding down a full-time job and doing this assessment in evenings and weekends. That's tough, isn't it? If you don't have that time with a generous employer to be able to let you have some time off during the day to just kind of, think things through, doing an hour or so in the evening doesn't suit some people, does it?
No, I don't think I could have just done an hour at a time. I probably attempted it a few times on the case study, but you don't get into it enough to be able to actually achieve something in that time. And don't get me wrong, there was definitely a few late nights where I remember the clock ticking, close to midnight a couple of nights where you're thinking, oh, right, I've got to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I need to get my head down. So there's definitely a few of those, but I genuinely think that you're not as productive and not as clear and focused as you are in the day when you're trying to do things that late at night. We all have day jobs as well, and I did have to chomp through some my normal client bank etc and work as well and family etc, so it's a really really big task to take on.
Yeah, right. So let's get into the nitty-gritty then. Tell me about the areas of the case study that you found most challenging and then what you did to overcome those things.
Yeah, so I think the main thing for me was, I suppose, a mistake on my part was that I wanted and I felt a need that I had to start writing up the plan before I had finished most of my calculations. And I'm glad that I took your advice on that I didn't do that. But it was a really strong urge that I felt like, oh my goodness, I'm really far behind because I haven't written a single word for my financial plan, but I've got multiple spreadsheets, of all my calculations. And I think for me, that was a real challenge, because mentally I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to write this whole report in the 3 or 4 weeks or something that I've got left, when I hadn't put pen on paper in terms of the Word document. So that was a tough challenge mentally, I think, because I think naturally you want to see like half of your report written by X weeks into the process or something, whereas you hadn't. But actually your calculations were such a large part of that. It wasn't a fair comparison between the two. So that was a big challenge. I think the other challenge was time, which we've already touched on. I think underestimating the amount of time perhaps that things take, and again the amount of time that you need to allocate in each period. So I don't know whether it's how my mind works, or other people may be very different, but as I said, I genuinely do not think I would have produced or achieved anything if I'd picked this up for an hour at a time. It had to be like a 3-hour slot and then lunch and then another 3-hour slot or something, to actually feel like I was making progress. And I think that isn't probably clear sometimes to people when they pick it up. And admittedly, some people might work better with just little hour slots where they can get stuff done. But I think on the type of work that this is and the type of case study, it's so detailed and you need to be so focused that you shouldn't underestimate the time that you need to give this.
And did you feel that you were on a kind of emotional roller coaster as well along the way, because this case study it checks everything at you, doesn't it, as well as your time commitment? You're applying so many areas of your technical knowledge to is brought to bear for the benefit of your particular client in your case study. So how did it feel going through the process?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you remember one call that I had with you, and I think I had a mental breakdown, didn't I?
Yes.
It was a little meltdown on the call, and you were so kind and so understanding. It made me think, oh, I'm sure this happens a lot. But yes, I was an absolutely emotional roller coaster. And I think mentally part of that battle was that I hadn't written a word in the financial plan by so many weeks in. And I was just terrified, thinking, I cannot get this done in the time, and I can't just submit a series of spreadsheets. That's not even going to get me any kind of marking. So yes, it was definitely in my little it's good. I mean, that's what I found so valuable about working with you on it, in a way, is that it's almost like you do need somebody there just to support, to say, no, this is normal, this is okay, this is the plan, we're still going to get it done, and you're doing everything that you should be doing, and just putting a positive spin on it. And that support and encouragement, I think, is key for anybody to have.
Oh, well, that's great to hear. And most importantly, that's exactly what you did. You didn't throw in the towel. You carried on holding the line, didn't you? And you got everything done in time.
Yes, just. Gosh. Yeah. I mean,
Mrs.
ideally everybody, I think, will have finished, a good 2 or 3 weeks before the deadline, and then just reread, and actually colleagues to read and all of that. Reality is, I just don't think it's true if anybody says they've done that. Mine was a lot closer to the line. Within a few days, I'd finished. I had a few days at the end where I could send it around colleagues and get feedback or something. And it was a tense few days where I just kept reading it, and rechecking before I submitted. Yeah.
But it came together quite quickly, didn't it, at the end, once you've kind of finished with your spreadsheets and that writing up piece? Did it feel like that took you forever, or was it a case that actually once you could see what all your numbers were telling you, that you kind of knew what you wanted to write?
Yeah, absolutely, which I found fascinating actually, because
It's interesting, isn't it?
yeah, it was. It was almost like I'd written it in my head already, and I was just writing it down. It was just the time almost typing it up. I mean, I probably understated that a little bit, but yeah, it was super easy to get the words down on paper once I'd done those calculations. So yes, yeah, that part of the process I thought was much easier than I thought it was going to be.
Mm. And tell me, how did you find the spreadsheets? Because some people love them and some people hate them.
Yeah, I had a few mini breakdowns, I would say, where where I realised I'd gone through and I was sort of like on objective 3 or something, and tried to stress test something or something, and then I realised that I'd got a really simple part of an initial calculation or spreadsheet wrong, and then I must have rehashed the spreadsheets 3 or 4 times, which is an immense amount of time each time you do that. But again, I would be surprised to hear that people don't have to do that, because unless you've done this qualification before, you wouldn't know of those little things to look out for necessarily. And that's part of the process, I think. And I think I accept that now. But at the time, it was like, throw down your notepad and your pen and, storm out the room sort of thing, and just come back in an hour, I think. So yes, the spreadsheets were a challenge, but I learned some things along the way, and that's what the point is, isn't it? So I'm pleased I've come away and that I've got some, achieved some learning from it.
And I think sometimes when you're going through the process of building something like this, you kind of have that I think I can't remember who it was now. Donald Rumsfeld said it's unconscious incompetence, and then conscious incompetence, that you don't realise what you've missed out, and then your brain is working so hard because it's working so intensively, isn't it? Working on the figures and then starting to write up the plan, and then you all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it kind of seems to tap you on the back of the head and go, "Oi, you've forgotten about this," and you just thought, yesterday you were 100% certain it was all fine, and then kind of overnight your subconscious has kind of checked it all and kind of checked your homework for you and kind of gone, "Oh no, Laura, hang on a minute."
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because it's always at like 2:30 in the morning or 3 a.m. or something. And you just get this little moment where you go, oh no. Oh no, I've missed that. And you go and have a look in the morning, and it's, your head in your hands kind of moment, isn't it? But,
yes, it happens to us all. Yeah. Not that I'm speaking from experience at all, but yes, it happens to me too. So tell me, how many hours do you think it took you to complete your assessment, including obviously all of those reworks and the pondering and everything else, in order to get your first submission in?
Yeah, so my honest answer to this is probably near 200 hours, which is quite incredible. I have no idea how I managed to fit that in. But as I say, there was a few late nights, any weekends I could allow, and the occasional day in the week that my employer let me have for this training. So it is a vast amount of time. Even that reading and rechecking at the end is probably a couple of days of solid reading through your calculations and everything. So yeah, please do not underestimate the time that this takes. I think it's 150, isn't it, that they say allow? I think I was well in excess of that, being totally honest. Yeah.
And I think sometimes when that 150, I would say 150 to 200 is within the normal range of most people find it. But some people have said to me, look, when you add in the kind of thinking time when you're making a coffee, or speaking to your partner or friends about it, and it's one person I was interviewing last year, and he said, my wife said, for goodness sake, I'm glad they're not real clients, because I thought you'd be moving out and moving in with them. You talk about them nonstop. It's kind of, it's all consuming, isn't it? You kind of wake up thinking about them, and so do you fall in the camp of the people who, when they finish their case study and they've submitted it, they quite often say to me, Jackie, I just want to chuck my case study in the bin now because I'm fed up with these clients?
I don't think I did, actually, because I as I say, I think it was quite a close call for me actually submitting it to the point where I felt like I was happy with it.
Yeah.
But then I do remember going back in a few days after submission, just having another look, because I thought, oh, have I done that bit right? And, it's pointless at that stage because, of course, you've got to wait for their feedback and their assessment of it before you really get stuck in if there's something else. But no, I think I've probably gone back into it a few times in those few weeks after submission, just to see what I did there and, should I have done that sort of thing. So no, I'm still not sure I'm entirely over all my clients. So we'll see. Maybe in a few years they might disappear. Yeah.
So tell our listeners what happened when you got your results back for your first submission.
Well, I was very surprised. It was a very brief letter from CC just to say that I had passed and my assessment was good enough to meet all of the criteria. So I would be awarded my level 7, which was fantastic news. And it was such a relief. Yeah, I think I read the letter about 94 times before it actually sank in. But yes, it was great.
I mean, that is a phenomenal achievement, Laura, on your very first submission as well. So many, many congratulations, both from me and from all of our listeners, because I'm sure there are lots of people out there thinking, oh, gosh, I hope I can do the same thing and emulate all the hard work that you've put in as well. But it's really, really well deserved, all your hard work and your determination throughout those weeks that we worked together, as, brought to the fore in order to be able to pass. And obviously now you've become a CFP professional by filling in that last little bit of paperwork.
Yeah, and I'm super proud of it. It's one of those things that I've been sort of looking at and aiming for over the last few years, and I am super proud of this. It's a great, great designation to have on as a financial planner, and I'm really proud.
Yeah, and justifiably so. Yeah, absolutely. So tell me now, it has actually been that long, has it, since you found out that you passed? But there's been, a few weeks that have passed now since you found out that you'd passed. Do you think that looking back and the things that you have learned both about yourself and about financial planning along the way, do you think it's going to change how you give advice or maybe your processes in the background at BRI Wealth moving forward?
Yeah, I do think there are some aspects actually, particularly for me as an individual, as a financial planner working with clients, because it's so often, isn't it, that a client will come to you with their main objective or their main focus, and that it's never just that. There's always other ones, and I think sometimes we're too quick, or I am, or have been in the past, of just trying to focus on that main, objective that they're clear on. But actually, part of our job, a big part of our job, is trying to uncover those other sort of objectives and working with those multiple objectives to get them where they need to be. Yeah. So, yes, the complexity of dealing with multiple objectives, I think, is going to be a focus for me going forwards. Yeah.
And I think it's kind of those unintended consequences, isn't it? If you focused on one area, like on retirement planning, you are having unintended consequences potentially in other areas like estate planning or something like that. And just being able to step back and think, well, hang on a minute, I'm not just honing in, maybe I am honing in on that area right at this moment, but actually there are all these other aspects that I need to bear in mind that maybe that opens up a slightly different conversation with a client, doesn't it? And says, well, look, you could do this, but these are some of the other consequences of doing that. And is that, really what you want?
Yeah, definitely. And putting a number on it as well, quantifying it. So using, cash flow modelling, etc., is such a key part of that, because it's a great visual way to show clients, the projection of their income and assets, etc., and how they're going to meet those objectives. So ensuring it's quantified is another key thing, I think, from the CFP that's a good takeaway.
Yes. And, a quick question about software that you use. Has this process made you look at the software that you use slightly differently at all?
I've never been, I have used multiple cash flow softwares before. I wasn't a huge fan of using some of the ones that we've used, because I personally felt it lacked a little bit of detail, but actually, spreadsheets do a great job, but the input process is a lot more than when you use one of these off-the-shelf cash flow things. And actually, many clients, whether they see a series of charts or a table of numbers highlighted with colours, etc., for shortfalls or things like that, it doesn't make a difference. It's just that visual aspect. So however that is shown to clients, I think is going to have probably the same outcome for them, in that you're just highlighting that there is a shortfall or a surplus, etc., for meeting their objectives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I certainly wouldn't propose replacing proprietary software that you're using already with Excel spreadsheets, because obviously every time you update a spreadsheet, which would be lots as tax changes and so forth, then all of your clients' previous plans are completely out of date and would need redoing again. So absolutely not one for using moving forward, I would suggest. But some people have said that actually going through the kind of nuts and bolts of being forced to do it through Excel does kind of give them a sense check, lets them give them a sense check on, software like Voyant or Cash Cow called Truth that you might be using. So that even if there's an error in there, that you kind of have this second sense of being able to go, oh, I'm not quite sure what's wrong with it, but I can kind of sense that something isn't quite right with it. So, for some people, that seems to be a bit of a theme that's coming out in some cases. I guess it depends on, how well you understood your spreadsheets, doesn't it, really? And how, if that's your thing or not, gives you that insight sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a learning curve for using the spreadsheets, I have to say. I learned lots of things along the way. And yeah, I'm really pleased that I did it that way. Definitely, I will be using some form of that in the future for checking other analysis or anything. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So we are nearly at the end of our interview today, Laura, already, although honestly, I could talk to you all afternoon and pick your brains a bit more, but I will stop rabbiting in a minute. So I just have one final question to ask you, and that is, what advice would you give to those who are starting on their journey to become a CFP professional today?
Yeah, so my first tip is to just not underestimate the challenge and the case study, because it's 10 weeks and you really, really need every single minute of those 10 weeks. So I think not underestimating it from the start, that this is a huge challenge and they're expecting you to spend 10 weeks on this case study, and they're expecting whatever you produce to be 10 weeks of work. So think about it like that before you start, because I know we're all guilty in the past when we're sitting exams and we might, pick up the study text or do some quick old exam papers or something the week before. You cannot do this on this case study. That just won't wash, and that's why it's such a great accreditation to achieve. Secondly, I would probably say make sure you've got some support around you, whether that's in the form of you, Jackie, or your teammates or family or whatever. Just making sure you're really clear with them about what you're undertaking here, because as I said before, it's an emotional roller coaster at times, and it was nice to have somebody to pick me up and just go, oh, it's going to be okay, and this is normal. Because if you don't have that, I imagine there's a chance that some people might just walk away mid case study, or not get to the end and achieve what they want to achieve. So that's nice to have some support around you. And final one, I suppose, or final tip from me, is again about the standard. So I think, and I always compare the CC content to CII, and I know I said that at the start of this podcast, but I think the standard is totally different to what you might be used to from the CII, and the objectives that you're expected to meet in this case study is of a really, really high standard. That's why it's level 7. So just make sure you're really, really clear on those objectives. They set them out really well, and they tell you, how much in each objective that you've got to meet from your case study. So just have a look over those and just be really clear about the standard that they want to have from you.
Laura, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thanks very much for joining me.
Okay, well, thank you, Jackie. Thanks for having me.
It's really interesting, isn't it, to listen to different people who have different experiences of gaining their Certified Financial Planner certification, or maybe developing the financial planning profession at large. If you know anybody who you think might be interested in listening to any of these podcasts, then please do pass on our details. That's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. See you again soon. Bye for now.